Welcome to Artist Trauma. This week we did some Gogol. We did the overcoat and we did the nose. This is my edition. I like the Pivar Volkolenski one. They're very fun. It's a very fun and lively one. I don't think their translations for other things is quite as good, but for Gogol, I think they're gold.
And mine is just the Ronald Wilkes, and I don't know if it's good
Okay.
because it's the only one.
Yeah, well, I guess I shouldn't be like that. I just feel like the voice is very lively, which is what's
They
great.
did a good job.
But anyway, so Chris, this is your first time reading Gogol. What'd you think?
Oh, I thought he was great. It's funny. Originally, we were going to read Nevsky Street and Nevsky Prospect, and I actually had some construction issues with that one, but now we're not talking about it. So that was the only one I had some minor critiques
Uh,
on.
I'm sorry to let
So
you
now
down,
we're just doing
and I'm sorry to
those.
let you down.
No,
Uh,
no, it's fine. I mean, the nose of the overcoat, where I was just like, well, these are just banger classics. I mean, we're gonna talk about the form and construction, but also their difference. One thing that's nice is that the nose is a comedy, it's a satire, and the overcoat is a tragedy, and yet there's easily through lines on both, which you can pin Gogol's style down. So I thought he was pretty consistent between the two, and I think he's pretty obviously earning of his grandfatherly stature in literature, just without really any debate. you know?
yeah, yeah, it's. I mean, one thing I love about it in particular is just the sense that he clearly loves writing. Like he's just so enthused by the whole process and like telling you these goofball kind of stories.
He jumps in all
Sometimes
the
they're real
time with
hard. Sometimes they're real hard. Um,
yeah, and he always jumps in as like, don't get bored now, reader. I've got something tasty throwing your way, and you're like, okay.
or 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 at the end of the nose when he's like, I can't believe the choice of subject that our modern authors have. You know, after telling, he's complaining about himself, like this doesn't do anything to help the country.
And I was reading more about the nose and how really it's in a long line of nose literature that was happening at the time in Russia. There are all these phrases and all these. So like he's kind of the next in line. And apparently there's a scene. Tristan Shandy was just translated into Russian around this time. And apparently in that novel, which I mean someday I'll get to, it's a on Reddit, it's a gigantic behemoth crazy thing. There's a scene with a nose and like a pie, and so that they think that might be where Gogol got the nose in the food in the bread, which is great. Uh, and also, it's really meta when he complains because it's like, yeah, he's complaining, but also he's complaining about himself, and then it's like, but all these topics are also in the air anyway. So it's just funny.
yeah, it's okay. Just so our audience knows, the nose is about a man who finds a cuts open some bread one day and finds a nose of one of his the people he barbers for. Um, and then it's a story about a man who's lost that nose and running around the city trying to find it and put up advertisements or whatever to rediscover it.
And as the nose goes on, the nose gains more and more human anthropomorphic qualities.
Well,
And it's like very beautiful.
it's so well. One thing is like it's so contradictory, like the two parts of it. Like at one time, it's just a regular old nose that's just fallen off.
Oh
Um,
yeah, this story doesn't actually make sense. Like we have to fully disclose to everyone this is a magical story. It's
yeah,
not like consistent. Yeah, keep going, keep going.
yeah, and then you have to think in the same space as like Saturn devoured his children, and then they came back outside of him. It's like don't try to picture it, okay? Okay, it's just words. It's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, like like so. Jesus Christ. Maybe it's like just how it starts of like the nose, like the guy finds the nose in the bread. And of course his wife just has to like be furious at him, like, I knew you'd cut off someone's nose one day. I'll get the police on you yet.
And that's the first signifier that this isn't going to make sense and that it's part of the humor that we're suspending our normal, because normally obviously any person would be like, that's fucking crazy, like where's the rest of it, I mean, there's all these normal responses that she doesn't have.
Well, it's like in that movie Ted a while ago, where it's the guy, the Family Guy, Seth MacFarlane. Um,
Talking bear,
yeah,
teddy
yeah,
bear talking.
the talking teddy bear, and then like one day like comes to life, and the kid's so excited, and then he shows his parents, and his parents completely freak out and start screaming.
Yeah.
That's the normal human reaction to a talking teddy bear.
Yeah.
And, we're not getting that here, folks. As we shouldn't probably. Um,
Yeah, we're in a, I mean, I think some commentator said like that distance, from from reality, from the way people would really respond, is what gives the story breathing room to go fantastic places. Since it's suspending some of the normal responses, it opens up a playground that we accept to happen.
yeah, I guess one thing that's interesting is the contrast is with Ionesco's The Rhinoceros. Um,
Yeah.
you have like there's a situation where it's like, okay, what is this absurdity happening to us? People just turning into rhinoceroses. Um, the way people are reacting is not quite the way you'd expect them. They're very sort of complacent about this state of affairs,
I mean,
liberal minded even. Um,
liberal-minded, imminent critique of the rhinoceros.
well, yeah, you really have to see things from their perspective, after all, you know.
But doesn't like I mean, when we talk about modernism or absurdity and then we read this, don't you think that like the only way to make sense of it is that era is just bigger than individuals? Like parts of the nose with some updated language would have just fit in with absurd literature, you know? And so the fact that it's 100 years too early, it's like, oh, then it's like a fairy tale. Like we can't look at like just a handful of names and then say the era. The era's got like thousands of names, because otherwise Gogol just is more modern.
I mean, let's see. That's an interesting comparison, or how exactly is this different or similar to um,
Rhinoceros.
Rhinoceros? Like in terms of that kind of absurdity, I feel it's sort of there's a what I want to say is there's more of a stress with the rhinoceros of this situation is just so absurd, and this is almost the essence of existence, and you see like different kinds of people, the conspiratorial minded one, or the liberal minded humanist, or the tight ass social climber, like these different
Yeah,
people.
we have all these figures. Yeah.
And it's like you get a sense, like a picture of like humanity in this farcically absurd existence reacting to it. And since you take it more metaphysically in a sense, I'd say. While in the nose, it's more just like, yeah, here's something outrageous and funny and just a good time. It's not really saying something. I think it is saying something about, yeah, life's just funny and screwball, and it's a mess. But I don't think it's meant to be read in the same way exactly.
Well, yeah, I think on that, to steel man you a little bit about the difference between these two worlds. It's like, okay, the rhinoceros isn't a work of satire. It's in the mainstream art world. This is a work, the nose is a work of categorical satire. So it's in this genre that existed. Whereas I think the theater of the absurd is trying to say, no, we're mainstream art, making statements about existence. And like with satire, it's always from the margins. It's not like obviously this is a great work of literature too. It's just that the category of satire depends on a certain version of reality that they believed in.
I think
you're lampooning something, but I think there is a
I think
difference.
there is a lampooning there. There is a certain criticism of this particularly narrow, pompous um, uh, uh, state counselor, um,
Oh
uh,
yeah,
as he's titled, or as he likes to go, a major. Um,
amazers. Yeah,
yeah. But I think the comparison is in a sense this is like Alice in Wonderland, where
yeah.
it's like, hey, look, life is funny and bizarre and out there. Like, we're just having a good time here, guys.
Wasn't Lewis Carroll kind of making the point that life isn't like this? Like like math isn't like this, Because if it were, then this would be what it would be like, and then it's all fun and weird, um, but not real. That was a horrible way to say that. Should I phrase? Let me phrase it a
Yeah,
different way.
it's differently.
um, so Lewis Carroll was really critical of mathematics in the 19th century. I think it was negative numbers or imaginary. It was imaginary numbers, right? I don't remember. I just this is from a long time ago. He was, if I remember right, part of the reason why Alice in Wonderland exists is because of his criticism of 19th century mathematic, new ideas. And it's meant to say this is not how it is. And like life isn't like Alice in Wonderland. We can have so much fun enjoying it because life isn't like that.
Hmm. Um,
I have to think more about that. I know that he was critical of mathematics, and I know it's related to Alice in Wonderland. Um, that would be a fun. I bet you'd be interested in that and get dispatch. Go get back to me on that
yeah,
at some
I'm
point.
gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up. I know he wrote about mathematics. I know he wrote about things like a book on like non-Euclidean geometry. I don't know whether he had a positive or negative opinion on it. Um,
Or if he had the training to
I think he had the training. I think
get the
he
training.
knows.
Okay.
I think he was I just looked him up on Wikipedia and it's like he is like known for several like valid mathematical achievements.
Yeah.
So I think he's someone to listen to on this.
I can make the point totally differently in a better way without Lewis Carroll. There's two types of SNL sketches. So there's the one type that's like we're critical of politics, we're critical of life as it is. And then there's ones like there's one called Almost Pizza where they're sitting down and it's like, "Oh, what are we having for dinner tonight?" Is it, "Oh, it looks like pizza." And she goes, "It was designed to look like pizza." And they're like, "Honey, is it food?" And she goes, "They want you to believe it is." And it's fucking perfect, right? But there's no critique. It's just
Yeah,
great. And I think that the
that's
nose is more on that side, right? Like it's just fun.
I agree. I think that's
Yeah.
what's going on here. But I think there's still like important point about life to be made, even from that screwball perspective of like, it's like it doesn't have any like concrete point, the nose, let's say. But it's like it's just fun. It's just fun, and you get to see like his image of people just sort of muddling around, like just doing this and that. It's like, okay, yeah, sure, this doesn't like add up to like, oh, now I know it's, I've just finished reading like a Doll's House, and I realize you should treat women like people. Or something like that. It's like, no,
Well,
you don't have to come away with that kind of
no,
moral.
no, we don't. There's no edification in the normal sense. If there is, it's just about teaching you the non-causality of certain aspects, because it's just like random. Like even the choice of two people, the barber and the guy, it's sort of random. I mean, they make meaning out of it, but they would have made meaning out of anyone.
Yeah, as in like it's just fun to see in those two particular people, like so. Okay,
I mean, like he literally says at the end of the story, I simply don't know what one can make of it. However, when all is said and done, one can concede this point or the other, and perhaps you can even find dot dot dot. Well, then you won't find much that isn't on the absurd side somewhere, will you? And it's great.
yeah, I mean, I just think it's like, yeah, like it's like O. Henry stories where it's like, like the capture of Red Chief, where it's like, Yeah, that doesn't really mean anything ultimately, but it's fun. Like it's just saying, hey, life's an adventure with something new around every corner. Like, and here's an example with it with Gogol. Like, yeah, like life is absurd. Look at this. This is fun. We're having fun here.
There's
Um,
even I read a Basho a Basho haiku, and he's got all these deep ones and all these fragments that are beautiful, but he also has one that goes. It's often translated as "Ah, spring, 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 spring," etc. And it's like, it wouldn't be great on its own, right? Like we would just be like, you're terrible at writing haiku. But like the fact that it's Basho and the fact that he has all these serious ones makes it just perfect. Yeah, it's great. It's like it's just silly.
yeah, we're just having fun here, and that's
But
great.
when someone like Gogol or Basho does silly, one thing I don't want to mistake is that, this isn't lowbrow. Like it's not like we're doing Monty Python. Well, some of Monty Python sketch aren't lowbrow either, but like,
Some of
if
them
you
are
just
very lowbrow, though.
some of them
Some
are
of
just,
them are amazing. Some of them are.
Minister of Silly Walks. But like I think that even so, shows like SNL are cranking out every week something. What Gogol is also doing is showing that ideals of craftsmanship and storytelling, they're not just, oh, we're doing something lowbrow. Okay, then who needs proportions? It's all still there.
Yeah. So let's get more directly into like the details of the story.
Yeah.
Um, so it's it's just so much fun. The idea of you've woken up without your nose. You're going through the streets holding a handkerchief to your face to hide that,
Mhm.
and then you find your nose in all dressed up as someone in superior class than you, going to church. Um,
Okay, so then here's my question, because Gogol does this a little bit in the Overcoat as well. Do you think he's just doing a bit of phenomenology, or do you think the nose has more human qualities now? Like, is this just a fun description, or are we actually anthropomorphizing? Like, what are we like? What's going
okay,
on here?
at this point, it's an
There's a person
actual.
there, right?
Okay, this the way I imagined it was either it was basically a nose where your head would be, just a big nose where your head would be, and then like the hand, and then like the rest is just a regular person beneath.
You went pretty literal on the
Yeah, I,
picture.
I went very literal of like, yes, that nose is dressed up in a particular kind of 19th century Russian uniform.
I
Um,
think you could do that. I think it's pretty open also to thinking that it's just a regular dude, but when you see your nose, none of the other qualities matter whatsoever. So the nose takes on the only essential quality.
so you think it's like an actual person, or
But the whole story, I'm not sure.
okay, okay, yeah,
I
I
mean,
just
the
say
whole story. The first time I read it, I thought it was a person. I thought it was kind of a joking, like he's so concerned about his nose that he's not seeing any of the other features of the person. He just sees the nose. And then as the story went on, the nose sort of just grew bigger and bigger and just took over the head. Um, so I mean, I'm willing to kind of leave it open. I don't know if we're really supposed to pin it down.
I mean, I think there's a contradiction of like at one point it's a nose wearing an outfit, and then another point it's just like, yeah, I just found this nose in the bread, and oh yeah,
And then
and
at other points, it's the nose is just back on his body at the end. So I
yeah,
don't
it just
know.
appears there again. Yeah,
Maybe
there's no
you can take the.
rules. There's
There's
no
no
rules.
rule. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe you can picture whatever you want. It's open. It's fine.
I mean, I also imagined like a nose that was like full body length, for torso with like arm, with a coat and arms sticking out and legs like just that like, um but yeah, anyway, so
Okay, yeah. So he sees the nose on another person, or he sees the nose as a person, or he sees just the nose dressed as a human. All three are okay. Whatever you want, dear reader. But yeah,
yes.
keep going.
Okay, but it's just so outrageous how he goes to sit down next to his nose. It's really fervently praying. Um and he's just realizing, okay, I am of a lower class than him. You know, I'm a mere state counselor, while he's an actual counselor, whatever the terms are.
Yeah.
And he's like, how do I start the conversation with him? Like, I can't just do that normally. Like, just. And it's like only like sheepishly, and after a while, he's like, but you're my nose. Don't you see that? Like, and, and then he's just this on, and like later on, like he loses track of the nose, and he's talking up to like he's saying, what should I do? And he's like, well, if my nose is capable of lying to me about our relation, then I do not know what other kind of perfidy it would stoop to in the future. So just like judging it morally like that. Like,
Oh, there's one thing we skipped over that was really brilliant is that the opening of the story is told from a different. Most of the story centers on the man who loses his nose, obviously, but the opening starts with the guy finding the nose and trying to figure out what the hell to do with it. So he's like sheepishly running around town with the nose. He drops it, and the policeman's like, "Sir, you can't just run away littering."
to keep like picking it up and going around, and by the time, and like then he like finally like drops it off of a bridge, and again a policeman's like, sir, what we explain what you were doing there for so long. And
And then he can't. But then there's one of this just moments that shows Gogol as a true brilliant writer. The ending of part one goes, Ivan Yakovlevich turned pale. But at this point, everything became so completely enveloped in mist, it is really impossible to say what happened afterwards. You're like, so you got nothing?
yeah,
It just moves
as in
on to
Gogol,
something
and as
else.
in Gogol decided, I've really written myself into a corner.
Yeah.
I'm done here. I'm done here. As in
And then
go
it was
go.
like I wrote pre-cinematic fade out.
um, as in, and like just about Gogol as a human being is, he actually like at one point he was like a professor of history or something, or a lecturer in history, and
Oh.
very ambitious like program at the beginning, but by the end it was like such a mess, the class, that like he was he was he was have like the final day of the course, when the final exams were being given, he just had wrapped around his head like a bandage or whatever, under the pretense that he had a toothache. um as in he says, which I just can't help but feel like, yeah, like this is a lie, this is a straightforward lie, because he just can't handle the responsibility of this course or whatever.
He's like, oh man, I've been off more than I can chew. Let's weasel our way out of this.
Yeah, so I just feel like, yeah, okay, okay, you got your no toothache here, buddy, but we forgive you. It's good. It's good.
I think that like in the there's a lot of different types of perversity in a fun way, not in like a
No, I
creepy
know, I
way.
know. Yeah.
No, like in the Lacan way. So like I definitely peg Gogol like as a playful pervert, whereas like when I'm reading Celine, I'm going, oh, and then the body parts came back to life so they could eat you again. Okay, this is not a fun type of perversity. But for Gogol, there's a sense of like, how do I put it? It's like the way to solve this problem is to most beautifully not solve the problem.
Yes.
I can't write my way out of this, but I'm a great writer, and that's actually sort of an essential component of fiction is is writing yourself out of an insolvable problem.
Hmm.
um Sorry, I don't. That was actually that was a better point than I thought. That was a more deep point than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah. No. No. I think it's good. I mean, you need to solve. You need to work your way through problems, but in this situation, it's like, he's given what he's working with. That's fine. That's fine. What he has here. It's interesting comparing it like his attempt at a novel, Dead Souls, which he only died having finished part one and a lot of chunks of part two. And
Burned in his like delirium, burned parts of part two, and then before he died said like the devil made me do a trick or something.
Yeah, well, I that's how I would describe it. Because I'm sure, like the parts you have of part two are like, okay, it's not perfect. It's got some of the characters are kind of propagandistic, but it's still like it's amazing work though. It's amazing work. It's a horrible shame we lost it. Um,
Terrible shame he burned it. It's his damn fault. I mean, I know he didn't finish it,
it
but
might
didn't
have
he burn
also
it?
been like an accident. Like, he was destroying some earlier draft and it was the wrong draft. It was like the actual finished thing. And, like, I don't know, I've heard that as a possibility too.
Makes sense.
So, I'm not gonna. I just remember, I think Emil Nold, the German expressionist painter, he would sometimes get so frustrated with a painting he'd been working on, he would destroy it. Um, and he would then look back on it later as referring to it like that painting as a lost day of happiness.
Oh,
Um, so anyway, um,
yeah.
I can imagine. Okay, but back to the main topic. Back to the main
Oh yeah,
topic.
yeah.
So the nose, and he goes to the newspaper to try to take an advertisement for his nose. Um, And Jesus Christ. Oh, and by the way, one thing that keeps happening to him is he keeps like remembering or seeing like an attractive girl and think, oh God, what a fine piece of ass over there. Or like just
Yeah.
remembering like some attractive like actress he's reading an advertisement for. And then like he comes back to reality with the moment of like, oh, but damn it, my nose, it's on here, it's on my face. I've been defaced. Um, it's
Yeah,
like
he's all Voldemort. But
yeah,
that's
it's just like such a fun like joke to keep like. Yeah, that was who it was, Voldemort. Yeah, I was just like,
Voldemort has just the two splits.
yeah, I know. And it's like I just couldn't remember who it was that like I know an actual character who looks like that. Um, but
They were doing the artistic choice of trying to make him look like a snake. You can make him even more abject. When you remove the nose and have it be a straight line, it's basically just purely abject. It's like just wrong. Like he's right about his self-image. Without a nose, and like it'd be better if he had a gaping. He even mentions it at one point. It's like it'd be better if he like had like a wound. Like the fact that it's smooth makes it even worse, right? And that's just true. Like if you picture like someone who lost an ear in battle, that's fine. But if you picture someone with a smooth alien surface, I mean that's kind of horrifying.
the thing
Like if gangrene took his nose and they worked on it, you're like, oh, I pity him. But the smoothness, you're like, witchcraft.
there was actually one guy at school. There was actually one guy in my school who he had a like his ear wasn't not fully formed. It was actually mostly flat where it was supposed to be.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that kind of common like birth defect, right?
yeah, yeah. And in my experience, I wasn't like close to him, but like I literally went to school with this guy for like 12, 13 years.
Yeah.
And I don't remember anybody ever. It was only ever commented on twice, and one time it was like, okay, like that was just you shouldn't mention that, but it was like meant nicely. It wasn't like.
Okay, yeah.
And then, but the second time was one of his brothers saying like someone was complaining and like you should he was like yelling at him like saying something the brother and I think it was on the bus and the bus driver said like don't yell at your brother like that and he said but my brother can't hear so well.
It's like,
And that was the only other time anyone ever mentioned it.
and
um,
it's like, and
my
it's
experience.
socially fantastic because it's like siblings have a sort of free space to get away with shit that you and I wouldn't ever be able to do without
Yeah,
committing a faux pas, right?
yeah, yeah. So like that was just anyway, I just had to bring that up since it's like,
Oh,
oh,
great.
here's a funny incident with that kind of thing.
Oh,
Um
yeah, and all of it's at play in this story. I kept thinking about different parts of my body, and then okay, so the guy loses his nose, it shows up on the other person, and then at some point he goes to the police station and he's gonna try and place like a nose wanted, I guess.
Yes, a nose wanted.
Yeah. And like this is utterly baffling, of course. And like, did you I don't know, okay, so I was literally picturing the newspaper man as the guy from Spider-Man 1. Like, I'm looking for pictures of Spider-Man. Like he was so animated and ridiculous. I just was literally picturing that guy. The Toby Maguire one that's
Yeah, no, no,
so
I'm thinking of that. Yeah, like I thought him as more of actually just like almost like lackadaisical of almost like yeah, like I'm sorry, I just don't know what you're talking about here, sir. Like what do you want me to do here? Like no, we can't post that. Like it's probably a secretive lampoon against somebody. Um
it's a good.
so it's that sort of thing. Or maybe you should actually go off and like if you really, I don't think it'd be much use to post an advertisement here. Perhaps you should go to one of the naturalist journals, if you wanted to be properly like remembered. Um,
That's so true.
so um,
Oh, and then it's like, well, I mean, someone similar came in last week. They had a runaway black poodle. It's like
turns out it was just a joke. It was just
like not even close to similar at all.
yeah.
It's like it's
Yeah.
like my wife's missing. Oh no. Well, the other day I let out the cat. And you're like, not the same thing. Not the same thing at all.
Yeah. And then anyway, so eventually he gets back home. And he's just thinking about his wife. Just having or not his wife. Like the mother. He's just utterly convinced that like the mother of the girl he's kind of courting um
Mhm.
did put a curse on him to remove his nose.
Yeah, with no evidence.
No
And it's
evidence whatever beyond the fact that she was like encouraging him to tie the knot already, and he was like, well, I still got another 5 good years of bachelorhood ahead of me. um what's
yeah,
the
like it's like, so you're like, so she's mad because you didn't yet jilt her. Like it doesn't really make total sense. Like it doesn't give her a motive. Actually, it just gives him a perceived motive.
well, it'd be like the motive would just be sort of petty vindictiveness, more or less, but it's like it's not well reasoned at all. It's more or less arbitrary. Like I didn't know.
He's grasping at straws, basically.
You really think that she's a master of the dark arts, do you? Um, um,
And so the letter is great because it's kind of like a lightning bolt because the lady responds.
oh, but by the way, his letter though, it's like he's making these big accusations and like upsetting it, but he ends with your humble servant.
Yeah, I remain, dear madam, your very faithful servant. You're like, it's kind of like there's this TikToker who makes fun of different age groups, like all the pitfalls of millennials and boomers and Gen Z and everything. And so, like, the ones who are always assholes customer service wise are the boomers. So they're like, I want a pizza. And then it's like, this generation sucks. But then no matter how mad he gets, he goes, God bless. And always leaves. And it's kind of like that. It's like, I hate you and you should never be born. God bless. And the letter kind of had that tone of like, yeah. And then her letter, I think her letter was one of the most fun things to read in the story, isn't it? Because she does the same thing.
Yes, yes. It was like I can't believe you would make these kinds of implications, uh, Kovalov, and just ends with, you know, um, but it's like as in it starts off saying, "I am extremely astonished at your professor. I warn you, I have never received the official you mentioned. Oh, actually, what was that bit about the official? I didn't quite. Um, like there was this Philip Ivanovich Patanchikov that was mentioned. I didn't quite get where that was coming from. Um, but
Oh
anyway,
yeah, I mean I only read it once. I think on a second read it that would be fine.
but anyway, um, let's see one thing. Okay, yes,
Oh,
never mind.
Philip. So he gives she gives the name to the civil servant he's just alluding to.
ah,
Detachment from its rightful place, its subsequent flight, its masquerading as a civil servant.
ah,
And then what's happening is she has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. And so she's grasping at straws and turns that guy into some and fills in the blanks that are wrong.
okay, okay. Now I get it. Now I get it.
Pretty
But
smart writing. He's kind of a genius, that's it's kind of a tightrope to write that. Uh but yeah, so she's like she can't take it literally. So because it sounds crazy. So that's why she goes that way, is because this must be metaphorical. You know, like you've taken my nose as in you've stolen my cock or something. Like
yeah.
she's like, I must not know this phrase.
Well, no, as in like it's also put as like, I don't. It's like you've taken my nose, he says, and like, well, I didn't mean to lead you by the nose concerning my daughter. I'd be very happy for you to marry her.
Right. I mean, very simply, this is actually where Lacan stuff is helpful. He means it in the real. She can't imagine that, takes it as symbolic.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good
It's,
way.
it's pretty like right, like that's kind of, and that's why it's so funny.
Yeah, it's literal than figurative. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Any way you want to say it is well how it happens. But yeah, and as we already said, what's great about the letter is she goes through and then at the end is like you can still. I mean, if you sober up, man, you can have her. Like, oh, okay, like rough. Okay.
just like one moment I particularly liked, by the way, was
Yeah.
when he finally gets his nose back. Um, he's let's see, let me just. Oh no,
You
no,
mean
no,
on Abel's?
not quite before he got his nose back. This is when the police officer comes by.
He gets his nose back in about a week.
Yes,
It's
um,
April 7th and it's March 31st right now.
yes. I'm just trying to find like where is it when it's finally handed to him because there's this great line.
Oh yeah,
Um,
right before part three.
yes, yes. Yeah. Here's the line that I really like. The major almost laughed for joy. But nothing in this world lasts long, and therefore joy in the minute that follows the first is less lively, and the third minute becomes still weaker, and finally it merges imperceptibly with one's usual state of mind as a ring in the water, born of a stone's fall, finally merges with the smooth surface. And then it
Mm.
turned into Kavalov began to reflect and realize that the matter was not ended yet. The nose had been found, but it still had to be attached, put back into its place. Like, this is great. This is great. I'm very happy with that. Particularly just like the farce of like, okay, like I've got my nose, but what do I do with it? Um, that's outrageous.
I thought it was, yeah, it's really good. And it's really suddenly beautiful out of nowhere, and then whoop, back into the shit. And it's just very nicely yanking us around.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything else to say about the nose?
So this is the type of story I think you can read throughout your whole life. This isn't like a one time and you
Yeah.
get all the goodies. It's a very deep story, even though it's lighthearted and fun. It's great literature. I think it'd be kind of fun to trace power relations throughout the story related to who's got the nose, who doesn't, where's the nose going. That would be kind of fun to see who loses power. Oh, and then where they because the nose is like kind of the weirdly somehow a signifier of like wholeness. I don't know. I think it'd be a
I'm
fun way to
not.
go
I'm
to.
not gonna go with that. I'm not gonna go with that. I'm gonna just say like, Gogol is just writing and having fun. It's like Yeah, like the barber, like he had the nose for a bit, and then oh yeah, then it's walking along and going to church, and oh yes, and then we just happen to miss the police inspector, and then like, we go to the. I'm just sort of happy to say like it's like yeah, he was just adding things as it came to mind, um, and he's himself aware of like just how broken or inconsistent his story is by the final statement. Like, yeah, like there are holes in the story, but whatever. I'm
Well,
happy
I
with
don't.
it.
I guess let me rephrase it. What I think is interesting about the story is the distance from the nose symbol to the literal man nose. And I think that whole space is where humor is. Like we started off talking about like, is this a man? Oh, it is the nose. Okay, but why are they treating it normal? Like, oh, well then it's just a joke in language. And I think that the whole story's brilliance for me comes from that distance between all the different phrases that were happening in the nose world at the time and sort of like the weird goofy literal aspect of it. That would be the map I'd want to make of the humor.
Hmm.
I think it'd be really fun.
Yeah, yeah. Just the different ways it's played off. The
Yeah,
different
and you just show, oh,
variety.
but then it flips over here, and oh, now it's literal. Oh, and then it's oh, and now it's in between. And I would even make a graph of three different types, and it'd be really fun. Now, would I do anything with that? No, it's just to highlight how many ways change happens in language in the story. Because it's never, I think what's interesting about this story is language is not static, but also like it's hard to figure out if reality changes. Like it's hard to pin things down.
I mean, I would just say like there are just it's like there's just incon. I think it is interesting to follow, but I'm also just like not particularly hopeful of like any deeper system to it. It's like he just had a fun way of starting it here, and then it's like then it's a Mega Man here, and then it's not again. We're fine. We're fine.
And that's a good point. I don't think there would be a deeper system. I think the only thing you would see is tracking the humor and the
Yeah.
ways and finding all the ways language is used. And that would be the deepest you could get. Because if you go any deeper, you'd ruin the story, obviously. If you're like, and this means something.
Yeah, like I mean, sometimes there is like, oh, this is a joke about like bureaucracy, or this is a joke about people's pettiness, or this is a joke about pretension. Like you have those are the jokes, and then you just have jokes of like, you know, your nose is like walking around like a person, isn't what like just sheer farce, is not barbed in any particular way. Like that's fun to figure out one way or the other.
Or also like, noses are really attractive when they're in proportion on a face, but when you think about it, noses on their own are not. Or just
Yeah.
they're just kind of strange. Like noses they have an absurd look to them. They got two holes in them. They kind of point. I don't know. They're funny. They're
Yeah,
just kind of
I
silly.
don't get the point. Like, I guess because like it's barely just. It's almost like if you moved your cheek, that doesn't really make sense. Your nose is like more like integral to your face. Like your eyeballs are different. Your lips are okay. What am I talking about?
Yeah, Ray smoked a big bowl before we.
Yeah,
I
I
just
just
think I think it's a nose because of two things: all the phrases that were about the time about noses, and second because noses are funny.
yes,
I mean,
noses are funny.
they look funny. That's all. I mean, that was just way too deep for the simple fucking fact.
Yeah, I was.
Sorry.
Yeah,
It would have sufficed if we just said noses look weird on their own, It's like, yes, that's definitely important to the story's impact.
yes.
Let's loved okay, so loved it. The traumatic aspect of it is this is actually one where trauma isn't the right word. I think the more correct aspect of it is arbitrariness, comedic. I mean, we're on this other side where I just it was very light. I had a great time, and it was truly not bittersweet, not any of those things. I just had pure fun.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's basically it for me too. I it was just fun. As in, it's just nice when literature is just having a ball. You know, like, yeah, hey, life is a good time here, guys. We're having fun.
Yeah, I mean, I find that with so many Edgar Allan Poe stories, where like a lot of people make them like, and they are political and they are deep and there are horrifying things, yeah. But like also in The Mask of the Red Death, I'm just having a fucking blast. Like I know this is a critique, but also, I don't know, it's so over the top. I'm just having fun here, man.
Yeah, like art is art's something to be enjoyed for its own sake. You know,
Yeah,
you don't
I
you don't
agree.
you don't need to have this overarching thing. It's an experience. It's just nice for itself.
I agree.
Okay, so on to the overcoat, which has
Now I'm gonna ask you, because you asked me these. How did you like this read of The Overcoat?
well, I had a very high opinion of it the first time I read it, and it was the same here. Um, let's see, what how would I start it? I would just say like this character of Akaki Akakievich, which apparently in Russian means poop. That's why the name is just so absurd. It sounds like that. Um, is he's just such a delightfully pathetic person in a certain way. Pathetic is not quite the right word, but he's just like, yeah, here's this poor little clerk who just loves to copy things, furiously passionate about copying things, doesn't have the mental capacity to do anything above that. He has reached his final station intellectually.
He tried it all and had like a panic attack.
Yeah, he
And it
tried.
was like changing the name.
Yeah, all you have to do is change the name of the institution and from first to third person. The tenth
Yeah,
or whatever it is. And like that's all
brilliant.
you have to do. And he's like sweating and puttering over it, and he's like, no, just give me copying to do. And of course he does that for as like his for fun too. He likes to make copies of documents not that are not distinguished from their style, but distinguished from the important persons to whom they were addressed. Um,
Yeah, which is like, so it's basically saying he wasn't copying them because of anything meaningful. It's not like you're copying Shakespeare to try and get into the head of Shakespeare. It's like it's just about rank. And you're like, oh well, I mean, okay.
oh well,
Who
Britney
cares?
Spears touched this one, or whatever it would be.
Oh, Britney Spears famously good with words. Let's rewrite her documents, and it's like,
Yeah, so so
okay.
like, so like that's just which I think that's cute. I think that's very cute. Like it reminds me when I was a kid, and it's like if you did so well on like the athletic fitness or something like that, you would get like a like some kind of paper signed by President Bush. And that sounded
Oh
cool.
yeah.
If
Yeah,
you,
and it was like you did. Sorry, I just remember this because it showed up arbitrarily out of nowhere on like Jon Stewart again. It's just such a funny, like, this national fitness test is only once a year, and it doesn't really matter to you. Like, it matters like to the institution. It's just so arbitrary for you as an individual. It was like, because I remember it was like, do as many push-ups as you can, and I was like, I remember as a kid being like, why? And it was like, just it'll be better for us. It's like, it's
that's the
so weird.
that's the thing I really regret. I have to say about like elementary school is that I was like a heavier kid at that age, and I really hated this. I hated doing the mile run. It was awful. Um,
Yeah.
and I really just wish I just decided, no, I'm not doing it. Fuck you. Um, like I don't like I. There was nothing that could have happened if I just hadn't done that. Like it's silly. Like it's like they wouldn't
Yeah.
have not have flunked my 4th year old, just for like not doing the mile run. Like you're sitting
Yeah, or like do these many sit-ups, as many as you can. Okay, yeah. Why? Well, like fitness. Like these vague abstract concepts that the
there.
government's trying to do.
Find it like so funny. Like one thing, by the way, like apparently President Bush, you can criticize President Bush all day long, Junior. But one
It's
thing that's
a
like
lot better these days.
Yeah. But he's the one thing that's sort of funny about him is or endearing, I guess, is he did actually want to do something with education. He was like wanting to do
Yeah.
some kind of reform, however inept. He was listening and trying to figure that out, and then 9/11 happened, and he really didn't want that. um, so
He
it's
didn't he
and I
didn't
just
want that. Is such a
and I
funny way to
just
say.
yeah, as in like it wasn't the direction he wanted his career to go. Let's say.
No, because he wanted to be a president that did little changes that made okay, like one of the things Bush did that was fucking great is he was one of the first president to start trying to rein in spam phone calls. He made the do not call registry. You
Hmm.
know, like these are sort of changes. He wanted a presidency that was a bipartisan, pragmatic thing. And it just that just it's just tragic. It just wasn't gonna happen at all.
Yeah, I don't have any broader opinions, but like I guess like one thing in my mind is I just it I just have to wonder like what it must have looked like for him to have just been like spending hours and hours signing like these little certificates for kids. Um,
I think it's like you did like 50 push-ups or something.
it's like I just find
You ran a fast mile.
like that's just Jesus Christ. Anyway, okay, okay. But I guess
That
part
was
of
the
the reason
that was
why I
the
want to
last
bring up
sentence.
Bush, by the way, is like I don't know, for some reason like just in terms of like the limited intelligence that's also like endearing. It's like yeah, that's like a Kakievich.
It's like we want people to be healthier. Let's have them do push-ups, man. So
Anyway, all right.
it's
So,
great.
so
No,
back to
I'm with you.
yeah. So back to this thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
the overcoat. Yeah, I mean it's just endearing this portrait of this man who's just not he's not someone you would pay attention to. He's someone who would get bullied. Who gets bullied.
And he
Um,
does get bullied, but he takes it sort of stoically and endearingly until he gets impeded in his work. And then they jump in and then he says stop.
yeah, and there was this like great thing, like dude, it was just like it was so heartrending that expression that like some new clerk at that office who was like, oh well, these gentlemen around me like they seem like like good influences.
Yeah.
Um, and then he heard the stop from Akaki, and he's just like, oh God, what am I doing? This is a human being. How dare I like do something this bad to an actual person with a soul? And I really just find that like very likable about Gogol of like he's very much interested in like portraying people who would not have normally been portrayed in art.
Yeah.
He has that deep sympathy, and like that he talked about that a lot in like Dead Souls. You have lots of people who are just like weirdos and oddballs, but like he humanizes them. He remember they're an actual like internal subjective experience they're having. They're not just objects for your laughter, you jerks. Um, so but he also notes that Akaki Kakivich is kind of funny as a person. Um,
It's kind of a line, right? Like it's like we're not gonna laugh at him, we're gonna chuckle at him.
yeah, it's
It's a little different.
yeah, it's sort of like a good-natured ribbing. Is kind of the way I'd put it. Of like, yeah, like, this is friendly laughter. Of like, yeah, he does have oatmeal or watermelon rinds in his hat. Um,
And also like you can abstract to like your own life, or I'll do it for myself. So like I collect New York Review books classics, and I got into those because it was like unheard of classics, some of them good, some of them bad. But then if you really pin me down, like why do you collect these books? I'm like, man, they look really good on the shelf next to each other. It's really pretty, man.
yeah,
Very.
I
So
feel
it's like
like
I don't know. There's a lot of books. There's a lot of presses that have classics on them. I could have picked something else, but I chose this one because it's pretty. I don't know.
yeah, I think I'm very sympathetic with that motive. I think I can't quite think of I almost like feel like yes, yes, I bought that video game online. I bought it through the PlayStation Store. Kind of want a box though. I wanted to look
I,
nice on my shelf. Um,
that's
and
kind of like the people, economists and everyone, 20 years ago thought, oh, this is going to be the end of books, right? We're just going to move to Kindle. And like no one talks that way anymore because it's a book, man. It's nice. And that's kind of it. I don't know. Like, and that alone sort of saves books. Like, no one gave up buying books.
yeah, it's so yeah, it's funny how that is. How but anyway, back to Akaki Akakievich. Um,
So basically, I mean, like, we only got. I mean, we went an hour on the nose. I'm gonna truncate this story because it's pretty
yeah,
easy to
which is the
truncate.
more important story, by the way. But like, yeah, go on.
This is like more of a classic and like Russian history and everything, and it's a masterpiece and it's really good. I was more in the mood for the nose, so I liked it like slightly more. But I obviously every page of this is perfectly written.
Yeah.
He's just trying to get an overcoat. He gets the overcoat. It takes tons of penny scraping, lots of different things. He's in debt to other people, and it's really a story humanizing poverty. He gets it, and they go to a party, and he's robbed, and the
Well,
police are unhelpful, and he loses the coat, and then he dies, and that's almost the end.
yeah, and it's what it is like there's just so much like okay, it's so again, it's just so endearing how it's like he gets this he just wants to patch up his old overcoat, but the tailor's like there's no patching that up. Like it's just going to fall off whatever scrapes I put on there.
Yeah,
Um and it's like and then you just see like that like him like yeah like I'm saving up and I'm not I'm going without dinner and I'm using the landlady's light when I need a to do something in the evening or whatever, like just all that stuff is just like that's and he just like it gives him this real sense of purpose, this glowing fortune to look forward to. In over 6 months, he finally gets the 40 rubles he needs. And he does it. And he gets it, and like it's this grand moment where even the tailor, that horrible drunk, who if there's a cross on the calendar for a holy day, he'll be drinking. Um, which
and
I'm
his
sure
wife will
in
hate
Russia
him.
happens 400 times a year, having a cross. Um,
Yeah, I was like, that's a lot of, those Russian Christians. That's a lot of holidays, Russian Orthodox, if that's what it is. It's a lot of holidays.
and on this day, Saint John had a breakfast with his friends. Um, whatever.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but I just but anyway, back to but it's like it's even the tailor is like there's a certain grandeur about him when he's like finally presenting the coat, and like there's a difference between someone who merely puts in a lining or does a few or stitches something up versus someone who is able to fully make a coat. It's like that.
Right.
That's great. That's great. Like this pride in your profession and that's dignity. It's just so endearing. Um, but then it's like he just feels so good in that coat. He just feels so good in that coat. Um, but the thing about the party is that it's at first like, well, we should have a party to celebrate your new coat, cocky. And eventually, one of the other clerks is like, okay, yeah, so I'm going to have a party for my namesake, my birthday, and like we'll make it about the coat too. So it's like it's even more worse of like it's supposedly about him, and like he goes back into the and finds like his coat like on the ground, in the party. It's like that's just so sad. But anyway,
I know it's so sad. And I knew it was coming and I was kind of pained, halfway through you're like, "Oh, okay, you got the coat. So this is going to end horribly." Okay. All right. I'm ready. I'm ready.
don't call it
uh,
Russian literature for nothing.
yeah. Um so when he's robbed, the policeman's lazy and he can't get it, and he it turns out he can't even rely on his experience at the station he's in, because now he's in his flabby coat, of course. His He had to put on the old coat again,
Yeah, the house coat.
and the house coat, and he tries to go see a more high up inspector to try and figure out some way to find this coat, and he's just awful. And
Yeah, and by the way, it's so funny the way he's referred to as you have to go see an important person. And it's just like
don't you think that's Gogol, you know, putting in some implications, criticizing the bureaucracy?
yeah, as in it's just like this sort of status society that's like, well, like you need to have connections to make things happen. Like this is there's corruption around here.
It's a little Brazil-y.
Yeah,
I mean, it's totally different, but just in that
yeah,
bureaucracy way.
I guess like one thing that's happening in my mind is, Russia is still a very corrupt place. Um, this is something that
Still, has it ever gotten better? Isn't it like, isn't it just always getting worse for like thousands of years?
that's the thing is like it's still, it's still Russia, it's always been that
It's
way.
like the archetype of corruption. It doesn't matter what government's in control, corruption's in control.
There are it varies a bit. Like, in the 90s apparently it was like nightmarishly bad, the level it was just like a mafia state and like total chaos, that like more peculiar than like other times. So there's ebb and
They
flows.
had a, they had a hard transition,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know.
I guess in a sense, what could be more corrupt than just the Soviet Union of just in the 30s and 40s and 50s, just massive quantities of people going to Gulag. That isn't corruption, though. That's just horrifying evil. Like the Holocaust was not corrupt; it was evil.
No, the Ukraine pogroms were evil. It's like they murdered all these Jews too. Although I mean, I still think it was corrupt. Even I mean, there's still corrupt.
I'm sure it was
It's like
corrupt. I'm sure it was corrupt. Just that's
like
not the thing to
I
point
think,
out. It's like
well, sort of. I still think that it still shows corruption. I mean, I think that I would make the argument that the version of communism that they were going for can't possibly work, not because of human evil or whatever, but because of human corruption. Like it's because it starts. I mean, there's so many stories, right? Of like, oh well, my neighbor is going for this position I am, so if I secretly denounce them in the press, they'll just be murdered. I mean, it's just awful. But corruption's still there throughout it, even if it's racial or other evil in there.
I mean, I'd say like just communism is evil, like just as an ideal, fundamentally. Um,
But
just
isn't
like
part of that reason because that you can't get together like that? I mean, it just
well,
you can't.
as an
Not
as
gonna do it.
like just like that whole like idea of like from each according to their ability to each according to their need. It's like my response is fuck you. Like I'm not here to like use my life to just help the needy. Like I want to be happy and do my own things. Like, yeah, I'm sorry there's some people who are needy, but I'd rather just kind of live my own life. That's as in I think like that's a moral thing to say that. Like I have a dignity as a person, I'm not serving other people. So just as an ideal in itself, I'd say like, yeah, I wouldn't want the communist ideal even if you could make it possible. That sounds like hell on earth. Worse than even, what the communists actually did. But
Well, I don't know if I agree with any of that, but
no, no, I know,
yeah,
I
I
know.
mean,
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. It's in like anyway, we're
yeah,
going way
because
off
like
topic.
I don't think the problem with it is the phrase. That's fine. I just think the problem with it is that's like there's a conflict between human biology. Like I think it goes so deep into like the look, you can plan whatever you want. You can plan a government, but usually life is just so much sloppier. I'm just not a utopian in that way. Like as soon as we start wrenching away from human behavior, that's when it just starts going totally differently. So like,
No, I mean,
for
I
example, the
think,
different.
you know, I mean,
Yeah, yeah, go.
you know, I'll say like I think like there is like you can plan for a much better society. You can organize things, like, you know, in a sense, like I would just say like even our like current society with all of its problems, like this is a utopia compared to like the rest of human history, just like with what
Oh, of
technology
course.
has made possible. And just I don't know, just the fact we have like a legal system that's like pretty reliable in a lot of ways. It's like it's got real problems. It's like it's you don't feel like you're going to get murdered an average day in an average city. Like that's a huge achievement in and of itself.
Yeah,
Um,
and in Salt Lake, it's not, you're never going to feel like you're going to get murdered. You'll just feel that your car will get stolen again. I'm still salty. I had my car stolen last year. But yeah, no, I mean, in general, you're right. And I think that, like, but don't you think that that is partly because things are planned in a way that, at least in certain capacities, accords with what we were going to do anyway?
yeah, as in my
Like, you
well,
don't have to
as
change,
in, I'm going to agree. I'm going to agree that yeah,
Yeah.
communism is a violation of human nature because it has a perverse view of what human beings should do. Like I think just this idea of like living for society, living for others, sacrificing yourself in that way, I just think yeah, that's just a corrupt way of going about things. You should live for yourself. You should live for your own happiness. Trying to make people live in a different way, that's wrong and it'll end in a disaster. So I agree with you, it's impractical. I just also think it's immoral. So
Oh yeah, and I don't agree with what you said, but that's okay. We can go to the
we'll move
we
on.
can
We'll move
get back to the
on.
story because we're already at
Yeah,
1:45.
we're hopeless. We're hopeless.
It's terrible.
Okay. What do you think of like the supernatural stuff at the end?
I thought it was necessary to make this more Gogol-y from the three I've read of him, because like I think the idea that it's a morality play is important, but you have a problem with the morality play where it's like, oh, is this going to get really stuffy? And so there has to be some open element that implicates the reader and everyone involved. And I think the overcoat kind of doing its own thing works really well as a symbol. So I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the ending elements, so like people are like, oh, there's this like sort of ghost ripping off people's overcoats, you know, like looking for his own again. It's like that's great. That's great. I'm on board with this because it's just like, you know, it's like there is this people are aware on some level that they really did wrong this guy, that they really did something inhuman to him. Um, but they don't and it is living on their conscience, like the important person who was the one who yelled at him at the end and like precipitated his like illness. um you know, it's like he is already like guilty about what he did to Akaki. He's already like ashamed, and then he's the one who's like who gets his overcoat ripped off in that vision of Akaki coming back and taking it from him.
Yeah.
You know, so that was good. I liked that because it like really like, you know, like it makes people pay a bit. It makes them like, yeah, you see, like that was heinous what you did to this odd, very odd, but perfectly human individual.
Yeah. Um, there's two types of great literature. There's the type where we can talk about it for 8 hours and everything's great. And then there's the type where I go, yeah, you're right. And I do feel a little at the overcoat. I don't know if I have much to say. I just liked it. I thought it was great. Great read. It was actually more of a great read for me than the Nevsky Square one or whatever it was, because I felt that one got bogged down at certain points, whereas the overcoat was the pacing was really good. It was more focused. But I feel kind of bad because I had so much to say on the nose. But then on this one, I'm like, that was a good book.
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. It's other things like we did like the balcony. Like I don't like the balcony all that much. I think it's well done and everything, but like you can talk about that thing because it's like it's fucking bonkers.
Yeah,
Um,
and we argued about it a lot, but we also agreed in the fundamentalness that like we both kind of didn't like it.
yeah, but
I
it's
mean,
like
we both.
it
I
opens
thought,
things up, you know.
yeah, and it was a chore to read. I don't know. Looking back on it, the balcony was like one of my least favorite ones we did, and I feel bad about it because it was great, but it was also like I didn't personally enjoy it.
Yeah, it was just something of yes, Janae, you're gay. Um,
And he's like, yeah, and you're like, but you're not gay like in the flamboyant cultural way of like F. Scott Fitzgerald, where it's like, oh, this is really flamboyant. And I felt like with Janae, there's a little bit of like a self-serving proudness to be on the outside that I found a little, I don't know, like a snarky, like, I'm on the outside of society. And you're like, yeah, okay.
yeah, with your
Give
world
you.
famous celebrated plays, okay. So
It's like, how outside are you really when you're like Jean Genet? It's like you really, I mean, he literally was for a period, but at
Jean-Paul
the same,
Sartre is writing the prefaces to your books and the biography. you know.
I know, yeah, and okay, maybe maybe we have more problems with Genet's character that infects the literature than we did with Gogol.
Like
Or
Google's
I
is a
just think
nice
he's a nice
guy.
guy.
Google's
He's
a
just a
real
nice guy.
outsider. I feel like yeah, he's out there, but he's like it's just be nice, just be nice. I feel like it's like this is someone who I really hope that like Bob Ross or Mister Rogers really likes Gogol. Like they
Yeah.
feels like that's something they would appreciate. Um,
Yeah. Well, I think there's a difference between being, and this is maybe a good ending point actually we could make, is like I think there's a difference between being on the outside and being very like caustically bitter about it, instead of being like on the outside and being sort of like just pleasantly on the outside.
yeah, just like
It's like when you watch a Lars von Trier movie, he's always like, yeah, Mike, on the outside, we're gonna cut off his penis and jerk it off. And you're like, oh God, why would you do that? And he's like, because it's edgy, man. And you're like, but is it necessary?
it
And you're
doesn't
like,
make sense.
well,
Uh,
it's like, oh, man, it's like, I don't know. Like when I was 20, it's like, yeah, edgy. And now it's like, well, I don't know. He's Lars von Trier. He's like one of the most famous directors in the world. He can't be that far on the outside.
yeah, well, some people are just alienated from existence. Um, so yeah, but
Oh,
anyway, so Gogol's just actually someone who's alienated from existence with Wittgenstein. I just wanted to say that. But anyway, Gogol's a
yes.
fun guy. Gogol's a fun guy.
Yes.
Um, I'm very happy to have read more of him or to
Yeah,
reread.
and I'm gonna buy Dead Souls. I know it's at I work at a bookstore and I've been eyeing it on our shelves. There's a second reason I'm eyeing it on my shelves because it's the New York Review of Books Classics edition, which I collect. So I can, add to my
Yeah.
collection.
Just so you know, on that one, part one is completed and
Yeah.
good, and the next part has a lot of really great stuff in it, worth reading, but it's much more spastic, for obvious reasons. Um, but anyway, okay. So in terms of, I don't we already talked about trauma already. I don't want to repeat that. It was fun. I had
It was
fun.
great.
Yeah,
Anytime you want to do more Gogol, we can always do a fallback on him. He's great.
yeah, I'm happy about that too. All right. So, bye, Chris.
Bye, Ray. Thanks for chatting.
It was fun.